Already, the administration's decision to restore relations with Cuba is impacting U.S. ties with the rest of Latin America.
This is a policy that isolated the United States from Latin American countries, which always had solidarity with Cuba, not because they liked the Cuban model or the Cuban political system, but because they felt that the United States went too far in really hurting the Cuban people.
When the president announced on December 17th that he was going to normalize relations with Cuba, the reaction from Latin American presidents was universally positive and really effusive. This was a change in policy long awaited by Latin America.
The long-running snub of Cuba by the U.S. at regional trade meetings and summits fueled the anger of Latin American leaders who used these events as opportunities to rail against U.S. policy.
Latin American governments have, for many years, condemned American policy toward Cuba. The United States cannot show up at a regional summit, such as the Summit of the Americas, without answering tough questions about its Cuba policy.
Latin Americans have elected progressive governments all across the hemisphere, and they made clear in 2012 at the 6th Summit of the Americas that if Cuba wasn't reintegrated into the hemispheric community, there wouldn't be a 7th Summit, and the inter-American system would begin to unravel.
Cuba must tread carefully in Latin America.
The relationship between Havana and Caracas is a complicated one. Venezuela has provided oil, which Cuba has used for consumption, but mostly has really sold on the international market. So it's been a major source of revenue for the Cuban economy.
There's very little sign that we're going to be giving them all that oil for free or at a discounted rate. The question becomes whether the Venezuelans are going to continue to do it.
The Venezuelan economy is not doing well at all. Oil prices have dropped dramatically. So Cuba recognizes that it needs to diversify its economic relations.
Opening Cuba may fuel demands for societal change.
President Obama's policy is premised on the idea that engagement will help the Cuban people to be more in contact with the outside world, more access to ideas, more access to information.